to record this meeting as we do for residents to be able to go back and rewatch it. We're going to do a meeting with our host, Bruce Tully, who is a security expert and resident of Somerset. And we're going to have an opportunity for council members and residents to also ask some questions themselves. If you do have any questions, we just ask that you raise your hand and we will call on you. If for some reason this meeting gets interrupted, we'll quickly put the kibosh on it and end it, and we'll send out a new link for people to rejoin. Okay. But as Mayor Slavin mentioned, this meeting is being recorded. So just one final reminder to folks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Town Manager. So I want to welcome everyone to this police community meeting. Public safety is a topic always on the minds of Somerset residents. While we are grateful for the supplementary police service our town council established some years ago, as everyone knows, our primary police protection is provided by county police. I'm delighted to convene this meeting today so that our residents can learn more about public safety and get their questions answered. We will start with a panel discussion, including our county police chief and our 2nd District Police Commander, and I want to thank them for making this time today. The discussion will be led by Warwick Place resident Bruce Tully, my nominee to chair our new Public Safety Committee. Bruce has had a distinguished career in law enforcement. His resume is vast. Special Agent in Charge, Senior Foreign Service Officer, Diplomatic Security Service, United States Department of State, International Security Consultant and Trainer, expert in counterterrorism, personal security and anti-crime. Promoted to the Senior Foreign Service by the President and Congress, Bruce is a career federal law enforcement special agent with the civilian equivalent rank of Brigadier General. So we will now all call him that in the future. He has over 30 years of service and experience, beginning with the United States Secret Service, White House, and Foreign Missions Division. He has expert qualifications in counterterrorism, executive protection, criminal and national security investigations, risk management, major domestic and international event planning and staffing, hostage negotiations, security surveys, and all aspects of personal security training, all of which we need in Somerset, as you know. And most importantly, he's a graduate of Sacred Heart University in Fairfield, Connecticut, and is the university's 2017 Distinguished Alumni Career Achievement Award recipient for his service to the nation as a federal law enforcement officer. And I know how proud he is of that. And with that, I give you Bruce Tully.
Well, thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you all for being here. Chief Jones and Commander Gagan, thank you especially, because I know how busy it is, truly, and it's a pleasure to have you here. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do is discuss Somerset, its safety profile, what we can do to help ourselves, and what the police can do for us and have been doing for us. And with that, Chief, I wonder if I could just ask you to give us a brief synopsis, and again, we value your time, on what you see as the county's problems, whether crime is emerging or not, and how that may relate to Somerset with our proximity to the district. And in particular, residents were worried about, might we see, and we don't have a crystal ball, the issues we saw in May, June with Friendship Heights being broken into. And again, Chief, thank you.
So thank you, Bruce, and thank you to Mayor Slavin, and thank you to all of the citizens of Somerset. It's a pleasure for me to be with you all today. I just wanted to share that, of course, 2020 has been a very interesting year for us all, and definitely for the police department in so many different ways. Of course, with COVID striking us and literally the entire county and state and the country to some degree going in the shutdown mode back around March, things definitely changed for us as a police department because we had to make some adjustments with our staffing levels in order to make sure that we had officers readily and available to be accessible. And if we had some officers who went down due to the COVID crisis, particularly if there were shifts that might have gotten exposed. We feel we've been pretty lucky. We've been able to manage that to a large degree. All of our patrol divisions have been, particularly in the 2nd District, and I think Commander Gagan can speak to it, have been readily and available to respond to all calls. And crime definitely took a turn in regards to really being low crime in the beginning during the COVID crisis. And then when the months became warmer around May, and of course, after we began to see all of the protests after the George Floyd incident, particularly here in the county, we began to see an increase in certain types of crimes throughout the county. Mostly what we began to see was the fact that some of our crimes, such as residential burglaries and some other types of robberies and things of that nature, originally went down. Our robberies began to climb throughout as the warmer months exposed us throughout the summer. We began to see a rise in auto thefts in the county, and we also saw a rise. We still see a continuous rise in our theft from autos, which is the #1 crime in Montgomery County. And this, goes a long way to individuals just going through neighborhoods, checking car doors in an attempt to try to steal property from within the cars. So we see that as the increase. But overall, crime has kind of maintained itself at a low level in all other categories for the most part, other than in certain areas of the county where aggravated assaults were somewhat on the rise, but that was not a rise that we saw in the 2nd District from that perspective. We did see, for example, the issue at Friendship Heights that began during the protests. We had 125 plus protests in the county during the George Floyd incident and the racial justice protests throughout the county. The good news is that Montgomery County, we were able to thwart, for the most part, any looting that occurred. Of course, we knew that first weekend we received the information from the District of Columbia Metropolitan Police that potentially we had some individuals who were going to come up to the Friendship Heights area and attempt to loot in the area. But we were able to provide additional police resources to make sure that didn't happen. So when those individuals actually came to the county line, we met them. We were there and making sure that did not occur. And for the most part, we've been able to maintain that throughout, other than I think a couple of incidents that occurred throughout the county, but we've been maintaining a steady presence along that corridor. Now, again, I'll allow Commander Gagan to speak to that. But overall, as it relates to, as I noted with crime in our county, during this interesting year, we have been able to keep crime to some degree at a level that we've been able to manage, even with a police department that some of our department we actually sent home for some time during the COVID crisis to maintain the healthiness of our department. So I'll turn it back over to you, Bruce, and I'm assuming you'll have Commander Gagan speak to the 2nd District specifically.
Chief, thank you very much. We certainly appreciate that. Commander Gagan, nice to see you. How are you?
I'm doing well, Brigadier General.
Very well here. Commander, I wonder if immediately you could just tell us one of the quick things that we get questions on, and you're the expert, of course, for us, and we appreciate that. At giving all things equal, at any given time per shift, approximately how many patrol units are in our district, and where do they usually, and I know it would be where crime is reported, where they are, but where are they actually deployed, and how many officers do you have on the street usually at a given time?
So thank you very much, Mr. Tully and Mayor
Bruce,
Slavin.
please.
Okay, no, thank you, Bruce. And I appreciate the invitation to join everybody today. So to answer your question, at any given time, I generally have about somewhere in the range of 10 to 16, maybe 18 officers that are out there on the street working. The second district, we cover about 56 square miles. So it's not one of our larger districts. We're about the fourth largest in the county. But when we talk about residence wise, we're up there because of, we're in such a condensed area. So we see we're about second in the county when we talk about our residential population. So with those officers in the second district, the district is then kind of broken up into patrol beats, and we have 8 patrol beats. So I have per shift, generally about 1 officer assigned to cover those beats, and those beats kind of range in size. We try to make them more manageable. The Montgomery County Police Department, we're very focused on the community policing philosophy. So this is why we try to make these beats, kind of more manageable for the officers to kind of get to know the people in the commercial areas in their district. So as I said, about 1 officer per each one of the 8 beats. The Bethesda Central Business District, we have a unit that's assigned typically kind of day and evenings down there. That group has about 6 officers, along with some corporals and 2 corporals and 1 sergeant that are generally responsible for that particular area. And then we have other units, like I have a plainclothes unit and a traffic unit that normally work kind of throughout the week, but they adjust as necessary.
Well, thank you for that. And correct me if I'm wrong. We have some residents, of course, who say, I never see a police officer, or, I call them. It might take a while to get here. And what I unofficially in the past have told them, I'm having done this for a living for a while, that depending on where other calls may be, sick leave, annual leave, accidents, you may have units at the other side of this patrol beat. When they call, it may take time to get here, or they're tied up, as we know, for some periods of time, assisting those victims, those other officers, and then doing reports. Does that sound correct?
That would be 100% accurate. It is one of those things that, as I said, when you're looking at 1 officer per beat, they have responsibilities mainly for that particular area, but they also are responsible for making sure that they're backing up their other officers that, kind of throughout the second district. So they could be tied up on a number of different issues.
And I think at this time, what I'd like to do, if permit me, all of you, to give me about 2 minutes, maybe 3. I've done a little write-up here, which I'm going to give with Barbara Moranis, who's been very nice to ask for an article I'll be doing for our town novel. But since I've lived here in 1982, I've heard constantly, and of course I look at it from my profession, that we live in a very safe neighborhood. I can't tell you how many times I heard that. My philosophy is that we don't live in a safe neighborhood. We live in a low crime neighborhood. Nowhere is 100% safe in life. And that's one of the things I teach at the Foreign Service Institute for everyone going abroad, in that security, frankly, is the individual responsibility. And we teach that. You have to be responsible for yourself. The town does what it can, a police department, but it starts with that individual. And we teach you, we can give you the mindset for that. But let me just read to you, since I've lived here, incidents that I think is important for people to know, so we have the reality. And since 1982, where I've been here, we've had low reported, property crime. But in recent months, let me just tell you this: we've had, in the time 1982, we've had 1 murder on Warwick. We've had a few domestic violence cases. We had an organized crime murder plot with U.S. Marshals protecting a sitting federal judge. We've had numerous vandalism calls with teens some in town, some out, dealing with alcohol, drugs, property damage, doorbell ringing after hours, running cars, in particular, cars that have their motor started to get warm in the winter where people leave it open. Bad guys in the morning and evening come by and steal them. We've had cars stolen, mostly left open, cars opened with teens, others just going by, seeing if they're unlocked or not. We've had unlocked homes entered with town occupants inside, homes entered with residents who go for walks or shopping, leaving the doors unlocked. We've had one racial incident of note with an object and a hate note left at the residence. We've had a major pedophile arrest. We've had a probable, what we call driving deviant in an SUV trying to pick up young girls. That remains open and happens nationwide. Right next door, where the people used to live a while ago, we had 2 home invasions where the person was tied up and beaten and the house robbed. We've had fires in the woods. We had a really scary 50 caliber incident in the woods a few years ago where someone was setting off rounds. We had multiple police come and immediately do that. We've had an Israeli embassy, I have to say, stalked by Middle East assassins. We've had espionage incidents. The town has been walked through by the homeless, gypsies, emotionally disturbed people, and so on and so on. So I think the point is that things happen. We have to be aware of that. We have situational awareness, which, Mayor, we can certainly do classes on, but we're not in a safe neighborhood per se. We're in a low crime neighborhood, reasonably safe, but the onus is on us. Now, having said that, if anyone would like to comment on that or dispute it, I'm very happy to talk about it. Remembering again that we're here to get as much information as we can from our distinguished police colleagues on how to protect ourselves, which is our responsibility.
So why don't we have, what time is it? Okay, so we're 20 minutes. Chief Jones, how much time do you have to be with us?
I have at least another half hour, 40 minutes.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, wonderful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So before I ask the how we're going to proceed is I would love for the chief and the commander to address Bruce's analysis, and then I'm going to take questions from our council members, and then Bruce will lead a discussion with our residents.
Thank you.
So it's your turn, Chief Jones, if you want to comment on Bruce's analysis.
Yeah, so I think Bruce makes a great point about really, when we talk about the low crime and in our neighborhoods, I think that's a great point. And I think what also to piggyback on that is to talk about how successful safe neighborhoods are. And a large part is due to the partnership of our community members, because the eyes and the ears of the community are as important as the police officers that patrol in areas such as Somerset, because you all live there, your residents live there, and are able to know what is right in your neighborhoods, and you can also notice something that doesn't look right.
Sure.
And one of the things we highly emphasize to our community is never to be fearful in notifying us if something of a suspicious situation or suspicious individual who's walking through your neighborhood doing something that just doesn't look right. Because generally our intuition tells us if it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. So we always like to say we'd rather be safe than sorry. So we are there to respond for calls for service. And we encourage our community members to call us or even notify us about anything that just does not appear to be right. And in many cases, this has helped us to solve some crimes in neighborhoods from individuals who are committing different types of crimes such as theft, fraud, or even, burglaries in many cases. So we want to make sure that our community members are aware and our partners, and that they understand that If an officer can come and check out a situation to make sure that that the neighborhood maintains its safety.
Thank you. Commander Gagan, would you like to add your perspective?
Sure. And Bruce is 100% on point. We talk about the types of crime that we see down here in the second district, and more importantly, what we see down in the town of Somerset and Friendship Heights area. The majority of the crime that has been occurring this year, year to date, has been along the lines of theft from auto and auto theft. And we saw it right at the beginning of the year, and this is, I'll talk a little bit about some of these situations, because I think while we have a tendency to kind of go after or investigate groups that come out of DC and that like to come up into the southern part of the district here to commit theft from auto and auto theft. So right at the beginning of the year, there was a huge spike in our stolen autos. And one of the things that we were seeing from there, that stolen auto cases and thefts from auto, and then there were a couple of residential burglaries, not necessarily in the town of Somerset, but down along the DC line, that we were able to link together. One group in particular was extremely brazen, where they were coming up into the second district here, and they were kind of main purpose. They were looking to break into cars, the majority of which were unlocked, and then they were crime of opportunity would come about where they would find a set of keys inside those vehicles, and they were able to steal a number of cars. So right at the beginning of the year, we saw a large spike in these type of incidents. That particular group that we were able to kind of link to these crimes then took it another step, where they were then not just okay with going into unlocked cars, but they were also kind of looking into windows of homes, right there, kind of where a lot of people store their keys, maybe on the kitchen counter or in a mud room, just right there, off an entranceway. They were trying the door. If they saw a set of keys, grabbing the keys, and then they were making off with the car. So this group in particular, like I said, we linked to a number of residential burglaries, auto thefts, and theft from auto. We identified the main individual that was responsible for that. We've been working very closely with my partners down in the district. Duncan Bedlian is the commander of the second district, just across the line. We share a border with him. We work very closely, and that individual was arrested. So I'm very pleased to announce that our detectives with auto theft and in the second district here are preparing an indictment, and they're looking like they're going to be trying to with the state's attorneys, they're going to put some heavy charges on the individual in that particular group. So I kind of wrap up that piece by just saying, a lot of these crimes could be avoided, and we stress this message when we're talking to community groups and we're in our messaging on Nextdoor about locking your cars, locking your homes, taking your keys out of your vehicles. One thing that kind of gets overlooked by a number of people is that valet key, the little plastic key that that many of us don't even know about, but obviously these groups do. These well organized theft from auto theft groups. That particular key is oftentimes left in the registration book, in that little package that nobody ever looks at until the engine light comes on in their car. So if you can hit that point to the residents of the town of Somerset, lock your car, take your valuables out of the car, and remove your keys, I think it would do a lot for public safety.
Well, thank you. So now I will call on Council President Shaw to see if she has any questions.
One of the things the council has done over the years is put a small amount of money in our budget to hire off-duty Montgomery County Police to help give us a little extra protection. We've been very happy with the services they've provided, but it's hard to get very much time. And I'm wondering whether you have any observations about whether additional police protection, given that the police can be one place and the crime could be happening 4 blocks away, how much additional security should we feel if we could have a greater police presence that we hire ourselves?
I think it would be useful, if I had an idea of how many days a week or how many hours you're typically having an officer work secondary employment down in the town, if you wouldn't mind.
Matt, do you
think
have
we're
that
in the-
information?
I think
Yeah.
we're in the. Did you want to answer, Matt?
I can just tell you briefly. I mean, it does fluctuate a little bit depending on the officer's personal calendars. But right now we have 3 officers who regularly put in hours with the town, and I would say every biweekly payroll, it's in the neighborhood of 30 to 35 hours between them that we average.
And I think that going forward, that our staff can work with Commander Gagan. In addition to, as I mentioned earlier, the council is about to reestablish our public safety committee. And I think that's something that Bruce and his group can also help advise the council and work with the commander. Was that your only question, Council President Shaw? Thank you. Councilmember Peel, do you have any questions?
I do, yes. I have more than one question. I'll just go ahead and say the questions and then you can choose whoever wants to answer them. As just following up on Marnie, the council has been under some pressure from the community to come up with some new ideas to protect the community, including some people have suggested installing cameras at the entrances to Somerset. And I thought I'd mention that and just ask if you could address that. And then my second question is maybe a little bit more difficult to have a sort of straight answer on, but following up on what Chief Jones said about situational awareness, I just wondered if you could give us any advice as a community, which, as you're aware, is, a fairly, I guess, it's not a particularly diverse community. And when you, Chief Jones, talk about situational awareness, and when you recommend that people sort of, I guess, in some cases, follow their instincts if something seems out of how it should be, and you want people to follow up on those instincts, how would our community balance that with our neighborhood's strong preference to support racial justice and to not engage in profiling? And I mean, I think the people in our neighborhood, especially, are trying to be very sensitive to that, and yet we have a tension in our community just because when people tend to report incidences or even things that they're not sure about, it skews toward reporting, on minority people, and I think that then it creates sort of a neighborhood reaction of, well, why are you saying that the person was Black? Well, then the person who's reporting and says, well, he was Black. I don't know how else to describe a person, and so on. I'm sure you have heard this from other communities, but in particular for Somerset, I think we would appreciate any advice that you both could give us as to how to manage that as a community. And then just thirdly, Bruce, I just wanted to mention that when you're writing your article, I think it would be very helpful for the community if you could just even pinpoint the percentage of crimes over the time period that you spoke about that could have been prevented with locking doors and locking houses. I think that would be a powerful number. So those are my 3 questions.
Thank you, Councilmember. Chief Jones, and go for.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
Councilmember Peel, I'm going to let Commander Gagan answer the question about the cameras. I think he'd be well fitted to answer that. But in response to which I think is a great question, particularly where we are in today's environment. And it's very similar to even in the world of policing, right? When we deal with suspicious situations, or we have this intuition in dealing with individuals about their behavior or being in a certain community and something not being right. And what the focus really needs to be on, and I know we are very sensitive to racial justice issues just the same. It is clearly on the minds of Americans all across because of a variety of events that have occurred. But what I always tell people is that we have to focus on the behavior. When you look at people's behaviors, you start putting things together, situations. For example, would you expect people to be walking around your neighborhood at 2 a.m. in the morning, right? That is not a common theme in your particular neighborhood. So I don't care what their race is, right? What their gender is the reality is that we wouldn't expect people to be walking in our neighborhoods at 2 a.m. in the morning. So that in itself means that that's outside of the norm. What also might be, again, when we talk about, for example, one of the things that burglars like to do is they like to ring doorbells, right? To see or knock on doors to see if people are at home. And when there's no answer, they begin to then, kind of, go around, or they may, and if somebody does answer or they get spooked off, they go to another residence. Well, again, is that normal behavior, right? Now, you could say, okay, is it a solicitor? It could be, right? It could very well be just that. If your community allows that, then okay, and that's a norm, then, I wouldn't expect necessarily a phone call. But when we notice that people sometimes do these acts as if they're posing as a solicitor, but they're really a burglar, right? And you've had a problem with burglaries in your neighborhood, as an example, regardless, I get it where there's a sensitivity because a person of color might be accused of doing something that they didn't do anything wrong, but it's really about understanding what the behavior, what are the norms, so sort of in your particular neighborhood. So for example, where I live, I know what's normal. I know what I see. I know what my family sees on a daily basis. And when somebody pulls into my neighborhood and just parks their car and is sitting there, that's not a norm, right? That's not a norm in my neighborhood. So I'm going to be suspicious at least. Now, it might be okay. They might have just pulled over the side of the road to read their cell phone or have a conversation, but it's still outside of the norm based upon where I live. So that's just something I would just share. As people are sometimes going through those conflicts of whether I should call or not call. That is just something I would just share with them. If it's just that, okay, a Black person is walking through your neighborhood, that's an entirely different conversation, right? That to me, that's not enough, right? But if there's these other factors that go along and the individual's acting in a very suspicious manner, then we can have a different conversation. Commander Gagan, I'll let you answer the first about the cameras.
Sure. Thank you very much, Chief. So I'll just kind of touch on, because I think ultimately the decision of whether the town of Somerset decides to put cameras up, that's going to be up to the mayor, the town manager, and the council. But one of the things that to consider is that the camera systems now, more and more people are putting them on their residence at the the doors, and we have a lot more access to these individual cameras. They have been an absolutely excellent tool to law enforcement. We have been able to identify a greater number of individuals that are committing thefts or burglaries. We've enhanced prosecutions with footage from the camera systems. So I am on kind of the side of, for the individual, residents or the kind of members of your community, I think that's a great idea. And it's something that I have at my house, as again, as a tool for me. But I think there's some privacy concerns that, again, the town would have to think about, when any type of government entity decides or is looking to try to do something like that, that's where you start kind of getting into those privacy concerns that could be a problem. But I would highly recommend to individuals that live in the community, to kind of, little peace of mind, all those different camera systems are a great investment.
Thank you. Councilmember Barr, do you have, you're muted, Robin.
Just one remaining question. Among the patrols, is there any guidance to them on how much they are on foot versus how much they're in the car?
So great question. One of the things that I am a big believer in is discretion for the officers. I do not put kind of limitations on the officer's imagination. So it really truly is up to the officers. We have many of our officers that are bike trained. And I know there have been times, that some of those officers, and again, it's up to the resources that we have. So I don't have a bike for every single patrol officer. And you have to be certified in using the police bike before you can take it out. But we do have officers that take advantage of those bikes, especially when when you're looking at kind of the nicer weather. They get out and ride. It's a great tool. There have been officers that have been out and kind of take advantage of kind of getting out of their cars and getting to speak with and meet with folks in different neighborhoods. Everything right now with the pandemic has kind of turned life upside down, not only for our residents in our community, but for law enforcement. Not every individual in community is comfortable with that face-to-face interaction with police officers. So we're all still trying to navigate that and how much, kind of personal interaction occurs, is really this is kind of a difficult time for us to try to be pushing for that, because it does not make everybody in the public very comfortable.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So now I will turn it back, give the gavel back to the Brigadier General to take other questions. And Chief Jones, if you have to duck out at any time, we certainly understand. And the great thing about this meeting today is that it is being recorded, and there has been so much incredible information that we will circulate to our residents. And I know it will be extremely helpful to our new Public Safety Committee as they do their work. So with that, Bruce, you have the gavel. And I think Matt is going to call on people as they.
Great.
So we do have one question from Bertie Pachenik. I'll turn it over to you, Bertie. You're going to have to
Part of it is a question and part of it is a statement. Since I've been living in the town for the last 42 years, I was the chairperson of the first security committee, I guess, for a number of years. And we conducted a big survey of the town about what was happening then. I would just say for the commander and chief, half of my adult life has been in the criminal justice system. So it wasn't an idle thing I did when I took that responsibility on myself. It was a great survey. And Matt, I don't know if you know about it, but in your files somewhere, we came up with probably 10, 12 pages of the best tips you can find that are still valuable for residents. And I do believe that every resident in the town and for the council should get those tips. It went through everything from cameras to lighting, to landscaping, to all taking the house apart, taking the garage apart, and where people usually put their extra keys that are so easily broken into because the garages aren't locked. What I'm saying is I think for the council, every household should get that packet of tips because they are still on the mark. So that is just one thing I really wanted to suggest. The question I wanted to ask is because I guess I'm one of the believers of that we have a very a low crime neighborhood, and most of the things we can do are for ourselves. As you mentioned, if we'd only do them, we were talking about locking cars 40 years ago. And finally, I think perhaps a reasonable percentage of the town is locking their cars, but still, I'm always amazed when I find that it hasn't been. The nature of the crime that's happened, forget 1982 and 1990. I mean, I do know all those crimes because I've lived through them. What's happening right now that we could deter on our own? Or I guess that's the nature of crime now. My guess is that it's really very low impacted and focused on cars. And so when the town council gets together to talk about if there's anything we want to do with police on our own, or more police or less, it has to be related to reality. I'm a big reality person. So what is happening in the last 2 years?
And before you answer, I do want to point out that Bertie Pachenik is actually Dr. Pachenik. She has a doctorate in criminology. So we have incredible resources among our residents. And related to her question, people have always wanted advice from the police in terms of the lack of adequate lighting on properties. And related to what Bertie said, most of the recent car thefts were due to the fact that the cars were unlocked. So I will now I'll turn it over to you. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No worries, Mayor. I think that was a good point. So let me throw this out there, and this will I hopefully be shared with your residents. I have a great resource here at the Second District, and my community services officer, Officer Dana Stroman, has been a member of the Second District and has worked as a community services officer for, I believe she's anywhere between 15-20 years that she's been in that position. She's a great resource for any resident in the community, to include the town council. If you want her to come out to take a look at the different residences about lighting and a lot of times the bushes and the kind of the landscaping can be a problem. So she's a great resource to share tips as well. So to touch on the second piece. So what crimes have we been talking about? And I've got information from 2019 versus 2020 here. The majority, if not all of your crime, is all property crime. Okay, and I specifically kind of pulled up, for the town of Somerset, those particular crimes. So last year there were 7 larcenies or theft cases, in the town of Somerset, and there were 3 fraud offenses. Now those kind of run the gambit, from confidence schemes to a number of other issues. This year, there's been an increase. As I said, we saw a little bit of a spike. So we're up to 21 property crimes, for the town. The majority of those are related to larcenies. There's 12 larcenies out of that 21, and seven of those are related to thefts from auto. And again, that's a mix out of that group. When I went and looked at the individual cases, whether cars were unlocked, Some people, believe their car was locked, so we kind of put that as an unknown. So like I said, kind of a mix in that. There have been 2 residential burglaries, and I'll touch on those because that was a question that was posed to us the other night. We could prepare and come up with an answer. One was related to a young lady that was seen in the neighborhood by several residents. The one particular house, she's seen on, we talked about video. She's seen on the Ring video laying in the grass during the day. She then gets up. She goes up to the door of this house, knocks on the door, and then just walks into the house where she's confronted by one of the homeowners. Detectives have been in touch with the homeowner. They've spoken to some of the residents. I know the officers were out there. They conducted a canvass. And at this point in time, nobody has ever seen that particular individual, that female. She's a young lady. She didn't have any shoes on. The homeowner felt that she may have been under the influence of some type of drug. So we're still investigating that case. The second residential burglary that occurred was a little bit more recent. And I think there was a theft of a package that was also kind of tied to the same individual. We identified that particular person that was involved, and this was another situation where the homeowner hears a chime at their door, alerting them that somebody had entered the house, unlocked door. They come and confront the individual, and the individual then walks off without ever really having done anything or just other than making entry into the house. That particular individual was identified as a homeless man who had been kind of recently taking up some residence over in the village of Friendship Heights over at Page Park. The officers have been working closely with the state's attorney's office to not only kind of charge that individual, to kind of get him into the system and get him mental health services, because that's part of we have the state's attorney's office has a mental health court for individuals that this individual finds himself in. So we're kind of working with them, not necessarily to kind of put him into the criminal justice system, but to get him some mental health assistance. So that's kind of where we're at with crimes down in the town of Somerset, and I'd be happy to, if there's a follow-up question about another particular incident, I'd be happy to answer.
Commander, did you have any other information? We had a report a few weeks ago about an individual in a black SUV trolling a neighborhood trying to pick up a young lady. I know it was reported, and we've had some excellent detective work with the victim's parents. Do you have any more information on that, perhaps?
So yes, and again, this was another situation where I count myself very fortunate that that I work in a county where people are paying attention and people are communicating with the police when something like this happens. So this this particular vehicle was seen twice, and there were two incidents where the individual was approaching young ladies, kind of that 12 to 16-year-old range, and was asking them to get into the car. Now, the detectives from the Special Victims Investigations Division were notified of this individual, the vehicle. They were able to speak with the young ladies that that had been approached. They identified at the time that while no crime was actually committed, it was concerning enough that we put out an alert for the patrol officers, in the Edward 1 beat where Town of Somerset, Friendship Heights, just to make them aware of this vehicle and the individual. One of the young ladies was really, she was outstanding, was able to give us a tag for the vehicle. So the detectives were able to identify this individual. They've had an opportunity, I've reached out to Captain Amy Dahm. they're continuing to kind of follow up on it, put this person on the radar. But we have, at this point, we've identified who that person is and where they live, and we're keeping a close eye on that person.
Thank you. And I think that's going to be very reassuring to the neighborhood. I would like to say one thing what the chief said, and something based that Council Member Franny Peel said on profiling and talking about people who may be of color or whatnot. What we teach at the U.S. government, particularly at the Foreign Service Institute, that profiling is the observation of behavior. And I think the chief said that very well. Who may be where at what time, situational awareness, and to what Bertie mentioned and others. At some point when the committee is formed, we want to go ahead and do some seminars on situational awareness, observation of behavior, and the tips that are tried and true to help us all to prevent or help to prevent incidents from happening.
So I am going to have to unfortunately leave. I've got another meeting I've got to go to, but thank you all. I know Bertie, she wants to say something, and but I appreciate.
Chief. Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you,
Chief,
Bruce.
thank you.
Thank you to the entire council, and Matt, great to see you
Be
again.
safe.
And hopefully we'll see everybody soon in person, right? So please stay healthy.
Great, thank you, Chief.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Commander.
Can I say one word?
Sure.
Oh, no, actually, it's more to the town council because I have not been attending council meetings, but I have been talking to the police officers who are in their cars when I see them, because one of them is on my block a lot. And I did work with the Police Foundation, Pat Murphy's Police Foundation, for your edification, which is the forerunner of PERF, which is really advanced policing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, I don't know what kind of information you guys get from the police and the security, one's police and I think one's security, who we hire for how many hours a week. But I would suspect that if we keep hiring them, you should just ask for them to keep lists of their contact with the community and what they are doing. I just suggest that because it's our town money that's going out to them, and I haven't figured it out yet.
Well, Bertie, I think I can help you with that because when I was on the traffic committee, we actually started a roster and an incident reporting, if you will, and that is available right now to the town. And when I was on that committee, we would get the readouts. So that is available, and I'm sure as an open air type of situation here, you can get that information.
Yeah, no, I don't want to see. Well, I don't want to need the traffic committee. I would like.
No, it's all incidents. It's all incidents, Bertie. It's not just sitting there. It's all incidents.
Oh, I see. Wonderful. I think maybe that's what the town people should maybe once a month get a reading out, or anytime one is kind of going to reevaluate things to know. Thank you.
Sure. And Commander, if you would pass on to your officers who we see frequently through the area, we're very appreciative of their work and they're very diligent in what they do. And in particular, people have asked me, knowing who I am, why that the patrol units, the MARC units, are running around with their solid blue light on. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that goes a long way for incidental bad guys, or whoever may be there, to see that police unit a little more visible. And as we know, when people see a visible unit, they slow down, they do something else, they move on. So we're very appreciative of that.
Most certainly, Bruce, and that, and again, it's all part of high visibility and and just making sure, because I think Mayor Slavin was talking about earlier about district residents saying or town residents saying they don't see the police officers. So early on in the pandemic, one of the things that I, kind of stressed to the officers, because I knew that was, we were all stressed, because we didn't know what was going on. We didn't know what to expect. People were at home. I stressed, to the officers that, when they were out and about, I wanted them very visible, within communities and neighborhoods. I wanted people, in our communities to see that their police were out there, trying to keep them safe as we were all going through the pandemic.
Great, thank you.
We have one question from Barbara Condos, if that's all right with you, Bruce.
Sure.
That's former council member Barbara Condos.
Hi, Barbara.
Hi, thank you. I know that sort of house numbers in Somerset are sort of hit or miss. I know they're county standards for house numbers. Some houses have sort of decorative numbers. Some houses seem to have none. And I was just wondering if that, I know it's a problem for emergency response, ambulance and fire. And I would assume the police also have an interest in having house numbers clearly visible, because often when you get a call, you're responding to a house number. So this is not really a question, but it's a concern that I've had over the years, as well as Nat Finkelstein.
Let's let, I know that the hour is approaching, but before we depart, let's have the commander comment on that. I think it's a very good question.
Sure, I think it's a great point. Not necessarily a question, but when time matters, especially in a critical situation, whether it be for the fire rescue side or police side, it's always always important for those house numbers to kind of stick out, so that we can readily identify the place that we're trying to get to. So again, it's one of those things that if you're going to be talking about public safety to your community, that would be one of the things that I would highlight. That's we need to identify quickly and easily where we're the location we're trying to get to.
Okay, well, thank you. I think it's time to wrap this up. I want to thank Brigadier General Tully for leading this very informative meeting and discussion, which we will use as a tool to educate our residents. I want to thank the Commander Gagan for being here for such a long time. And yes, we have worked with Officer Stroman in the past, and we will continue to do so. And I know that our committee and our residents and council will move forward in helping to make this an even more crime. What's the term you use, Bruce?
Low crime.
So we want to make this as low crime and community as possible. So thank you, everyone, and happy trails.
Thank you, Commander. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, folks.